I want you to think about something before we start. Think about the most anxious person you know. Not necessarily someone with a diagnosis, just someone who worries more than most, who catastrophizes, who struggles to make decisions without reassurance, who finds it hard to be comfortable in situations that other people seem to navigate without thinking twice. Now think about their childhood. Think about the parent or parents who raised them. I'm willing to bet that something in that picture is starting to connect. Anxiety in children is one of the fastest growing mental health concerns in the world right now. Rates have increased dramatically over the last 2 decades, and the conversation around it almost always focuses on the child, on their symptoms, their treatment, their brain chemistry, their genetics. Almost never on what happened in the ordinary daily moments of their childhood that their nervous system was watching, absorbing, and learning from. Because here is what the research is clear about. Even when the popular conversation is not, anxiety is not only something children are born with. In many cases, it is something children learn. Not from traumatic events, not from obvious harm, from patterns, from the accumulated experience of living with certain parenting behaviors that, repeated across months and years, wire the developing brain toward hypervigilance, toward threat detection, toward the persistent, exhausting belief that the world is more dangerous than it actually is. This video is about those patterns. 9 of them. None of them dramatic, all of them common. And if you are honest with yourself as you watch this, if you recognize yourself in some of what we're about to talk about, I want you to know something before we begin. This is not your fault, but it might be your responsibility to change. Before we start, I want to ask you something. Think about your child right now. Are they anxious? Do they worry more than you'd expect? Or maybe think about yourself. Do you recognize any of your own anxiety in these patterns? Drop a comment before we begin. I read them. And by the end of this video, I want to hear if anything changed. Let's go. 1. You treated every fall like a catastrophe. Your child is 2 years old. They trip on the rug and land on the floor. They are startled. They look up at you. And in that fraction of a second, that tiny window before they have decided how to feel about what just happened, they read your face. And your face is terrified. You rush toward them. Your hands reach out. Your voice goes sharp. Your whole body communicates that something serious has happened. And your child, who was not hurt, who was startled but fine, who had not yet made a single decision about how to feel, takes one look at you and starts to cry. Not because of the fall, because of your face. This is called social referencing, and it is one of the most powerful and least discussed mechanisms through which anxiety transfers from parent to child. From the earliest months of life, your baby uses your emotional response as information about how to interpret the world. When you are calm in the face of something uncertain, their brain registers, this is safe. When you are alarmed, their brain registers, this is dangerous. Not sometimes, every time, automatically, without any conscious processing on either side. Now multiply that single moment by 1,000, by 5,000, by every minor bump, every small fall, every ordinary childhood scrape that was met with a face that said catastrophe. Over time, what gets wired is not a specific fear. It is a general orientation. The world is a place where small things can suddenly become very bad. I need to monitor for danger. I need to stay alert. I need to watch the adults around me for signs that something is wrong. That orientation is anxiety, and it was built not in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulated experience of watching you be afraid of ordinary things. A study published in the Journal of Abnormal Child Psychology found that maternal anxiety, specifically anxious behavioral responses to children's minor distress, was a stronger predictor of child anxiety than genetic factors alone. The behavior in the room was doing something that genetics alone could not explain. Here is the question I want you to sit with, and I want you to answer it in the comments, because I genuinely want to know. When your child gets a minor scrape or bump, what does your face do? What does your voice do? Be honest, because that answer is more important than almost anything else on this list. 2. You catastrophized out loud. Be careful, you could really hurt yourself. Don't do that, something terrible could happen. I was so worried something bad was going to happen to you. What if you'd been seriously hurt? These sentences feel like love. They are love. They are the verbal expression of a parent who cares deeply about their child's safety and wants them to understand the stakes of the world they're moving through. But here is what your child's developing brain does with them. It builds a library. A growing, detailed, constantly updated library of things that could go wrong. Situations that are dangerous. Scenarios that end badly. And because this library is being built by the most trusted person in the world, the person whose job is to know what is true about the world, the child does not question its contents. They absorb them. Research from the University of Exeter found that parental modelling of anxious thinking, expressing worry, catastrophizing verbally, narrating worst-case scenarios, was one of the primary mechanisms through which anxiety was transmitted from anxious parents to their children. It wasn't the anxiety itself that transferred. It was the thinking style, the habit of scanning for what could go wrong, the automatic move from something uncertain is happening to something bad is probably going to happen. This thinking style, once installed, runs automatically. Your child doesn't choose to catastrophize. They were taught to, through thousands of exposures to an adult who catastrophized, and whose catastrophizing was always framed as wisdom, as care, as the responsible way to engage with an uncertain world. The alternative is not pretending the world has no danger in it. The world does. The alternative is modeling a different cognitive response to uncertainty. This looks a bit tricky. I think you can figure it out. That's a bit risky. What do you think you should be careful about? Teaching them to assess rather than to assume, to think rather than to fear. What sentence do you say most often to your child about safety? Think about it. Write it in the comments if you want, because the words you say most automatically are usually the ones doing the most work. 3. You never let them be uncomfortable. Discomfort is not an emergency, but if you respond to it like one, your child's brain will learn to treat it like one. Every time your child is bored and you immediately provide stimulation, every time they are frustrated and you immediately remove the source of frustration, every time they are sad and you immediately try to cheer them up, every time they are anxious about something and you immediately reassure them, immediately solve it, immediately make the feeling go away, you are training their nervous system. You are training it to believe that discomfort is intolerable, that it must be escaped as fast as possible, that the correct response to any negative feeling is to find someone to make it stop. And then one day, your child is at school, or at work, or in a relationship, and something uncomfortable happens, something boring, or frustrating, or sad, or uncertain, and no one is there to make it stop. And their nervous system, which was never trained to sit inside discomfort, fires every alarm it has. Research from the University of Denver on what psychologists call emotion regulation found that children whose parents consistently intervened to remove discomfort showed significantly poorer ability to self-regulate negative emotions in adolescence. Not because they felt more, because they had never learned to feel and keep going. The capacity to tolerate discomfort, to feel something unpleasant and stay functional, to be anxious and keep going anyway, is one of the most important things a child can develop. And it is developed almost exclusively through experience. Through the specific, repeated experience of feeling something hard and discovering over and over that it does not destroy you. Let them be bored, let them be frustrated, let the hard feeling exist for a moment before you move to comfort. Sit with them inside it, rather than rushing to remove it. That is not cruel. That is how you build a nervous system that knows it can survive the ordinary difficulties of being alive. I want to know, when your child is visibly uncomfortable and you're right there, what is your instinct? To step in or to wait? Comment below. There's no wrong answer, but the answer tells you something. 4. You made the world smaller to keep them safe. You kept them away from the playground because they might fall. You didn't let them navigate the social difficulty with their friend because it might hurt them. You pulled them from the activity they found hard because you couldn't watch them struggle. You constructed a childhood with the sharp edges removed, safe, controlled, predictable, and their world got smaller, and their sense of what they could handle got smaller with it. Here is the thing about a child's sense of competence. It is not built through being told they are capable. It is built through the experience of being capable, through having faced something that felt genuinely difficult and gotten through it, through having been in a situation that was uncertain and discovered that uncertainty did not destroy them. When you make the world smaller to protect your child from difficulty, you protect them from the very experiences that would have built their confidence. And a child who has never been tested, who has never had to navigate something hard on their own, arrives at the inevitable difficulties of a larger life with no internal evidence that they can handle it. Research on what is called helicopter parenting, the consistent practice of removing obstacles and managing difficulty on behalf of children, has produced consistent findings across multiple studies. Children of highly overprotective parents show higher rates of anxiety, lower self-efficacy, and greater difficulty with autonomous decision-making than children whose parents allowed age-appropriate challenge and risk. The world is going to ask things of your child that you cannot prevent. The only variable is whether they arrive at those demands with a nervous system that has been tested and found reliable, or one that has been protected and finds the testing terrifying. Let them into a slightly bigger world, a slightly harder one, not recklessly, but deliberately, with the understanding that the difficulty you allow now is building something that the difficulty you prevent never could. 5. You passed on your own anxiety without knowing it. This is the hardest one to talk about, and the most important. Your child is not only learning from what you do and say, they are learning from what you are, from the state of your nervous system as you move through daily life, from the low-level hum of worry that you may have lived with for so long that you barely notice it anymore, from the way you tense slightly at uncertainty, the way you scan for problems, the way your body changes when something unexpected happens. Your child's nervous system is calibrated against yours, not in a single moment but continuously, across every hour of every day of their early life. And if yours runs consistently at a higher level of alert, if worry is your baseline, if catastrophe is your first cognitive move, they learn that this is what it means to be awake in the world. Research from King's College London on the intergenerational transmission of anxiety found that parental anxiety was transmitted to children not only through behaviour, but through what researchers called emotional climate, the general tone of worry, vigilance, and negative anticipation that characterised the parent's daily emotional state. Children absorbed this climate not through specific incidents, but through continuous exposure to it. This is not a reason to feel guilty. You did not choose your anxiety. You likely inherited it from your own parents, who got it from theirs, through exactly the same mechanism. But it is a reason, perhaps the most important reason on this list, to take your own anxiety seriously. Not just for your sake, for theirs. A parent who works on their own anxiety, through therapy, through practice, through whatever path works for them, is doing something for their child that no amount of careful parenting behaviour can replicate. They are changing the emotional climate. They are making the air their child breathes every day a little less saturated with threat. If you recognise your own anxiety in this, drop a comment. You are not alone, and I mean that. The comment section on these topics is full of parents who see themselves and feel isolated. You are in good company. 6. You gave reassurance instead of confidence. Your child is anxious about something, the new school, the difficult social situation, the performance, the thing that is coming up and that they cannot stop worrying about. And you reassure them. It'll be fine, I promise. You're going to be great. There's nothing to worry about. And for about 20 minutes, the anxiety decreases. And then it comes back. And you reassure again. And it decreases again. And comes back. And you reassure. And comes back. You have accidentally created a loop. And the loop is maintaining the anxiety rather than resolving it. Here is why. Reassurance feels like comfort but functions like avoidance. When you tell your child there is nothing to worry about, you are not helping them learn that they can handle the thing they are worried about. You are helping them avoid sitting with the uncertainty long enough to discover that they can. The relief they feel is the relief of avoidance, and avoidance in anxiety research is consistently identified as the primary mechanism through which anxiety is maintained and strengthened over time. A study from the British Journal of Clinical Psychology found that parental reassurance-seeking cycles, where the child seeks reassurance, the parent provides it, the anxiety briefly decreases and then returns stronger, were associated with significantly higher anxiety severity in children over time compared to children whose parents responded to anxiety with encouragement to approach the feared situation rather than reassurance that it was safe. The alternative to reassurance is confidence building. Not, there's nothing to worry about, but, I know this feels scary. I also know you have handled hard things before. What do you think you might do? Not removing the fear. Staying present with it while helping them access the evidence, their own history of capability, that the fear is survivable. This distinction between reassurance and confidence building is one of the most practically actionable things in this entire video. Try it this week. When your child comes to you worried about something, resist the first instinct to reassure. Ask instead, what do you think you'll do? Tell me in the comments how it goes. I genuinely want to know. 7. You argued in front of them more than you realised. Children do not need to be the subject of conflict to be affected by it. They need only to be present. The developing nervous system of a young child is calibrated to detect threat and conflict between the adults who are responsible for its safety. Raised voices, visible tension, the specific emotional quality of two people who care about each other fighting registers as a significant threat signal. Not consciously. The child does not think, my parents are fighting and this means danger. The nervous system just activates. Cortisol rises. The alert system turns on. And if the conflict is frequent enough, the alert system stops turning off. Research from the University of Notre Dame on what is called background anger, conflict between parents that children are exposed to but not directly involved in, found that children from high-conflict homes showed significantly elevated baseline cortisol levels, greater emotional reactivity, and higher rates of anxiety and behavioral problems than children from low-conflict homes, regardless of whether the conflict was ever directed at the child. The impact of parental conflict on children is not about whether they are old enough to understand it. It is about what their nervous system is registering in the room, and what it registers becomes what it expects. A nervous system that has learned to expect conflict becomes a nervous system that is always at some level waiting for it. This is not about maintaining a performance of harmony. Conflict is real, and children benefit from seeing that disagreement can be navigated respectfully and resolved. The issue is the chronic, unresolved, emotionally intense conflict that makes the home feel like a place where safety is unpredictable. That specific quality is what wires anxiety. 8. You talked about your worries more than you meant to. I don't know how we're going to manage. I'm so stressed about everything right now. Things are really hard at the moment. I just worry all the time. Said to another adult in a private conversation, these are honest and healthy expressions of your inner life. Said in front of your child repeatedly, they are something else. They are data. They are information about the state of the world being delivered by the most trusted information source your child has. And the information is, things are uncertain, and uncertain is scary, and the adults are not sure they can handle it. Children are not protected from this information by not understanding all the details. They understand the emotional content. They understand that the person who is supposed to know that everything is going to be okay doesn't sound like they know that, and they file that away. They add it to the model of the world they are building, the model that will eventually determine how safe or unsafe they feel inside their own life. This is not about pretending that hard things don't exist. Children benefit from age-appropriate honesty about difficulty. The difference is between, things are hard right now and we're working through it, which communicates difficulty with agency and continuity, and, I'm so overwhelmed and I don't know what's going to happen, which communicates difficulty without resolution, difficulty as a permanent state, difficulty as something that might overwhelm the adults whose job it is to hold the world steady. Be honest with your children, but be honest in a way that shows them that hard things can be moved through, that the adults, even when worried, are still capable, that the family, even under pressure, is still standing. 9. You never modeled recovering from anxiety yourself. This last one is the most powerful, and the most hopeful. Your child is watching everything you do, including how you handle your own anxiety, including what you do when you are worried about something and have to keep going anyway, including whether they ever see you face something that scared you and come through it. A parent who never lets their child see them anxious is not giving their child a model of a world without anxiety. They are giving their child a model in which anxiety, when it exists, must be hidden, must be managed out of sight, must not be shown. And a child who has never seen an adult be anxious and keep going anyway has no model for how to do that themselves. When their own anxiety arrives, and it will, they have no reference point, no memory of watching someone they loved move through fear with honesty and come out the other side. But a parent who lets their child see them nervous and names it and keeps going. I'm a bit nervous about this presentation today. I'm going to take some deep breaths and do it anyway. Is doing something extraordinary. They are showing their child that anxiety is survivable, that it doesn't have to stop you, that the feeling and the action can coexist. Research on what psychologists call coping modeling, the practice of parents visibly demonstrating how they manage their own difficult emotions, found that children whose parents modeled adaptive coping were significantly more likely to use adaptive coping themselves when facing anxiety-provoking situations, not because they were told to, because they had seen it done by someone who mattered to them. Show them your anxiety sometimes. Show them what you do with it. Show them that the nervousness and the moving forward are not opposites. That is the model they will carry into every hard thing they ever face. 9 habits. None of them dramatic. None of them the obvious kinds of harm that anyone would recognize and correct. Just ordinary patterns, running in ordinary families, quietly wiring developing nervous systems toward the persistent, exhausting vigilance that we call anxiety. If you recognized yourself in some of this, if you saw your own patterns in these descriptions, I want to say something directly to you. You did not do this on purpose. You were doing the best you could with what you had, in a world that gave you very little guidance about how your behavior was being absorbed by the small person watching you. The patterns you are passing on are almost certainly patterns you received. The anxiety you may have transmitted is likely anxiety you were handed. But you are watching this video, which means something in you already knows that awareness is where change begins. Pick one thing from this list, just one. The one that landed hardest, the one you recognized most clearly, the one you know, if you are honest with yourself, is the pattern most in need of attention. And start there. Not perfectly, just differently. Your child's nervous system is still being built. It will be built for years yet. Every moment you respond differently is a moment that goes into that building, a small piece of evidence that the world is safer than the anxiety says it is, that hard things can be handled, that discomfort does not destroy, that the person they rely on most is learning, alongside them, how to be less afraid. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these 9 hit closest to home? Was it the catastrophizing? The reassurance loop? The anxiety you pass on without meaning to? Tell me in the comments. Not to confess or to perform guilt, because the conversation in the comments on videos like this one is where parents realize they are not alone in this. And that realization, that you are not the only one, that this is not a personal failure but a shared human pattern, is sometimes the first thing that makes change feel possible. Tell me which one. I'll be reading. Subscribe to Mindful Parenting. We'll be here every week.